Hello, everybody, and welcome back to OMB Reviews. I am the critic who is a cynic, and welcome to the last Good Morning Asgard podcast of the summer of 2023, the last of the Good Morning Asgard podcast for the year 2023 in general, as I'm not able to do the Good Morning Asgard podcast typically throughout the year, and with baby girl on the way, set to be born sometime in September, the chances of me having any time during any of the holiday frames to do this probably will not actually end up happening, as has been the case in previous years as well. So we'll go ahead and have an open forum discussion today. Be nice to keep things movie pop culture related, as that is what we focus here on OMB Reviews about. And there's just one story that I did want to actually formally bring up, because this actually broke last night, but obviously I have not seen it until this morning, and that is we have the projections for the upcoming second weekend numbers for Barbenheimer. And as I expected, they are right now projected to hold very well. Not nearly as well as I had thought in the case of Barbie, but still strong nonetheless, is the current projections for the film. Anyway, before we further ado, please make sure you smash that like button, light the 5-minute Aussie, and smash the rumble button as well. Thank you again for joining this morning. We got Orange Chat Reviews, who says, "Good morning, Asgard." What's going on, Orange Chat? Thank you for being here. He is the king mod on the channel, so do be respectful of him. Cthulhu, who's a member on the channel as well, says hello and good day to you all. Good day to you, good sir. Thank you very much for being here. Ambrose Chamberpot in the chat. What's going on? Akuris, what's going on? Welcome back. The Morak tag to say, "Good morning, man. Summer just flies by." It does. It really, really does. I honestly cannot believe that next week we start our faculty meetings. And then the week after that, we have students. I will say the way in which August falls this year is definitely better than in previous years, because in previous years, especially the last few, we've actually had it where our meetings have started almost earlier, because we always start the first week of August is when our meetings start. And so it's actually happened previously where we would have meetings starting, and the same week our meeting started, we actually also had students. In fact, I believe we had our meetings starting the week before, like the Thursday, Friday before, and then carrying over into the next week where then we had our orientation and stuff on like a Thursday and Friday. Luckily, that is not going to be the case this year. Very, very happy that we have a much, much better way in which August fell this year. They call me Mr. Williams sounds so very excited, saying, "Woo, let's go. Whoop-de-doo, Basil. What does it all mean?" Ready Curry, what's going on? Welcome back. Orange Chat, the man with the orange hat. "I am good, Odin, with exception to my larger Twitter account getting suspended with no notice or reason given, not given an email." Yeah, I mean, it seems that several accounts have actually gotten suspended recently without really a whole lot of information. I know that there's like a mainstream political channel, a political Twitter account that also recently got nuked. All I can say is if you have a second, I know you have your secondary account, just try to tag Elon Musk and others and see what can happen. It sounds like something weird's going on that, that end. We got Kinkane Rumsky hanging out over on Rumble. What's going on, Kinkane Rumsky? "My favorite season is fall, so it's somewhat bittersweet when summer ends for me. Thoughts, comments, concerns?" Kinkane Rumsky, yeah, so I love winter. I love the cold. I love cold weather. I hate hot weather. And here in Chattanooga, it is weird because our summer months are actually not the hottest. So this is something that I've noticed the few years that I've lived here. It's crazy that I've lived here for about going into my 5th year. Just insane to think about. But I all I can think back to is how I've noticed this trend where August actually ends up being our hottest month. Because I was actually looking at the forecast for the upcoming week, and we're supposed to get up to like 100 degrees over the course of the next several days. Like this coming next Friday, it's supposed to be a high of like 99 degrees, and we're at like 95 plus, no rain. So we had all the rain, we had a lot of rain over the June, July month, and now that we're getting closer to August, now it's, getting very dry and very hot. Not my favorite. Don't like it at all. I love winter because you can put layers on and it feels really good. Fall's okay. I do like the changing of the colors of the leaves and the cooler temperatures, but personally, I love winter, especially because it tends to kill most bugs. And I don't like bugs. I don't like spiders. So whenever it gets very cold, I know I don't have to worry about the bugs nearly as much. I don't got to worry about that kind of stuff. I don't want to eat the bugs and be happy and own nothing, right? I don't want to do that in New World Order. So stay away from me. Bianca Zombie, what's going on? Hanging out over on Rumble. How is it going? Icthulu, who is a member, says, is your school run by tinfoil hats? Do they think you were replaced by a pod person since June that they need to get fingerprints after a decade of employment? As I said, no, I'm going actually into my 5th year at this specific school. And so we recently in the state of Tennessee, and especially in our county, in several counties, in fact, in the state, we basically got school vouchers. So students can now, who typically would be going to a public school, now have the option of choosing, a family has the option to choose to go to a private school and to be able to bring those state funds with them. And so, which I think, again, is a very good thing for us because it means we can take in more kids and we don't have to worry about the tuition as much. Tuition assistance gets a little bit of help there too, as we tend to offer a lot of that. So because though we are now able to take in those students and therefore receive those dollars, right? The tax or the state or federal dollars, I forget which one it is. I'm pretty sure it's state, that we, our system that we had used right when we first had our background checks, when we first got employed, are no longer up to the standard that it has to be met in order to fulfill these obligations. And so we actually had to go through, this new process, get the digital fingerprints and all that stuff. And yeah, I made it on time. Thank you for remembering that too. I was very concerned that I wasn't going to make it back. And luckily I got there right when it opened. And of course I was still like 5th in line because a line formed, and they are first come, first serve, even though they also make you sign up online. It's the weirdest thing. They make you sign up online and register for a time, but you're not actually signing up for the time. My guess is that they still want your stuff in the system, so that way it's less information to put in. But at the same time, it's, wait a minute, first come, first serve, but then you don't actually have real appointment times? That seems odd. But luckily, I was able to get past that, and once the process started, it was just a few minute process to get the fingerprints in. But yeah, Keck44, what's going on, man? Cthulhu says, dang, that needs to be the rule in every state, says Cthulhu. I mean, I think that, so you're talking about like school vouchers? Oh, completely agree. I'm totally on board with that. And I've always heard the argument, because I do have friends that are, public school teachers, or have at least taught in them. And the argument is, well, when you offer that, what it means is that those students, and therefore those dollars that would be going to fund schools that might, need it in order to improve, are now going away from those schools, which means now you have less money at the public schools. And let's say, for the sake of argument, that you have a good or decent or improving school. As soon as you start to lose money, the chances of you continuing to be able to improve drop precipitously, right? I'm all for being critical of public schools because I think the vast majority are problematic in various locations. But there are some places. That's one of the reasons why we actually chose the location that we live, is that the public schools are actually good. And so I think that is something that is one of those consequences. But I do think that that's why there needs to be a conversation. And that's why the unions are such a problem, because the unions don't even want to have a conversation, right? The unions would rather try to put political pressure, trying to say that there shouldn't be any type of voucher program, that there should not be any control whatsoever, right? That they should have full and absolute control. The problem, though, is that means that bad schools continue to be bad and continue to be protected, whereas, schools that might actually be able to offer a better education and actually a better learning experience, teaching critical thinking skills, things that are very important and crucial to a person, to a young person, especially as they go through life, they go through puberty, they go through all the different developments that happen mentally. It's very sad that we can't even have conversations in this country about any of these things. And I think education is the most important thing for us to be able to have a conversation about. It is sad. It's one of the things where that's the reason why I love my class, because we talk about morality. Right? The first semester, we focus heavily on morality and moral principles, and it oftentimes leads to us having very good discussions. And I think I've mentioned this on the channel before. I had a student several years ago where we were talking about the issue of immigration. And of course, there are varying opinions on that. We're in the Bible Belt, and so things tend to lean more conservative, Christian conservative, I guess you could say. But obviously, that's not the entire story. There's different peoples with different opinions. But one of the things that came up was how one of the students who was an immigrant, how he and his family were not yet citizens and that they'd been going through the process for about 10 years. And I remember that brought up a good discussion because the people in our class who are much more apt to push something that probably they've learned from their parents about, their and influence their thoughts on immigration was very myopic. It was very just single focused, just not thinking about the nuance, not thinking about, some of the complications that come up with it. And so they moved from, oh, we need to kick people out, or, oh, we need to be very rigid here, to, oh, well, I know this person. I know him. I know his family. They're good people. They're good, hardworking people. Why is it that we're making them jump through all these hoops? And then that brings up the broader discussion of, and now take that within the context of, now think about all the people that are actually not doing it correctly, right? This family was doing it right, and they were having to go, almost 10 years, the process for them. And again, obviously everyone's different, but now take into account the people that are not doing it right, who are trying to enter the country illegally, who are doing that and are trying to do all these different things to circumvent the law. And yet in many cases, they're being put to the front of the line. And it's like, wait a minute. So it led to that broader discussion because now, wait a minute, now there's things that both sides of the argument feel like they have an investment in, and now they can understand, because let's say you're the person that's all about immigration reform, but you're very radical with it, right? More of an open borders policy. Well, then you think, well, wait a minute, you're having to go 10 years, but then this person's getting, okay, I can at least see how that could be a problem for somebody, right? And why that there can be an argument there. So I love it though. I love the discussions that we're able to have on these various issues. Let's see. Clint Stutz. What's going on, Clint? Says, my wife had to switch classrooms from kindergarten to second grade over the summer and had me up there moving stuff and putting stuff on the walls. She didn't even pay me. 1 week till in-service. The things we do for love, Clint. I'm sure. I know my wife would probably love to be able to come to the school and to design the visuals for my class. We actually have some renovations going on right now. It's like a big push for us as a school. And so I'm getting new carpet. Oh my goodness, new carpet. And everything's getting like a fresh coat of paint on it. My room is very boring though. I'm not that person, especially the female teachers. And I think that, again, most women could probably say, we're more creative minds in general. And it's true, they are. And so I've never been the person where I want to have all this artwork and all these visuals. I basically just borrowed the previous teacher who left some stuff on the walls. I'm like, this looks fine to me. I've changed a few things, but overall it's like, no, most important thing is the subject matter and the way in which the subject matter is presented in the conversations that we have. And really, honestly, the thing that I stress out the most about and the thing I'm most caught up on is always seating arrangement. Because I do like having control over things like that. It helps with classroom management by huge degrees. Let's see. Cthulhu says, I can only imagine what you think of Baltimore schools' utter failure with no accountability. I mean, I don't know too much. I'm not an expert on the Baltimore schools. I've heard about those things from the different news stories. But let's just say I came from New Orleans. I was born and raised in New Orleans, Louisiana. You all know this, especially if you've been following me for a while. And that was one of the prime reasons why we got the heck out of there. I mean, the crime, amongst other things, was a problem too. But one of the prime things was the schools suck. Like, as far as public schools are concerned. Private schools are great, but we're in a situation where, at the time especially, private school was actually something that was not really on our radar. I can't say much about the Lady Freya, but you all know as a teacher, teachers don't make, especially private school teachers, do not make a whole lot of cash. Let alone enough to be able to, support in the modern era. But it is something that was a huge influence on us to get the heck out of there, And I think that the school systems down there, the public school systems, are so atrocious. And it's sad because these unions have all these different protections. It protects these bad schools. It protects the bad teachers in those schools. And oftentimes people will just try to throw money at the problem. And we all know, no, if you have a problematic structure and you throw money at it, you are keeping the structure there and just giving them more power. So you're keeping things exactly the way they are, and you're probably making things worse. So that's why anytime there's any type of reform or attempt to try to fund schooling, if I'm ever in the situation where I have a say, even in my own, local area now, if there's ever a talk about giving more money, I would say, no. We're not going to just give more money. we need to look at the structure, because are there structural issues going on right now? Are there issues with the union? Are there issues with the way in which the actual school system works? Are there people who are problematic working, who are corrupt? No, it needs to be a whole, all-encompassing response. It needs to be an all-encompassing response. No doubt about it. Let's see. Lance Mala, what's going on, brother? Says, thank you for the summer streams. What have you enjoyed in the world of professional wrestling lately? Anything upcoming looking forward to? Yeah, so I've been trying to keep up with AEW. Collision's been fun. It is kind of weird, though, because even CM Punk had mentioned on one of the last, because it's only been a few episodes since it began, but he was mentioning how he's a Collision guy. And I thought, I didn't realize that there were going to be brand-specific personalities. I know that, for instance, with Dr. Britt Baker, DMD, how she actually is still a practicing doctor, and so her schedule is therefore more limited, and she only does certain things. That makes sense. But I didn't think anyone was necessarily brand-specific, and so for him to say that, I was like, oh, it would be kind of nice to know that there are going to be brand-specific personalities, because it's kind of confusing. Right now, though, I think the best thing going on in wrestling is the team of MJF and Adam Cole, baby. They are one of the funniest teams, and they are working. I mean, obviously, all of us are like, okay, at some point, MJF is going to turn his back on Adam Cole, and are they going to get the championships? Are they not going to get the championships? And there's a lot of different directions that they can go in, but right now, that's, I think, my favorite thing going on. So... We got Laura, the Modern Major General, in the chat. Good morning. Very early where Laura is in that California time. We got Shadow in the chat on YouTube. Shadow says, pray for Chris for Mr. Beast. What happened to him is unbelievably sad. And then goes on to say, to literally be living the American dream with a wife and a kid, and to throw it all away to transition. What has society turned into? I mean, I don't know too much about his story as far as family and kid. I actually didn't even know that he had a wife and kid. And is that meaning that he's abandoned them? That makes it even more sad. It's already sad enough when he's going through a clear mental health crisis, and instead of getting actual help, he's getting quote unquote affirmation, which ultimately means that he's just hurting himself, and he's hurting the people around him. And this is what drives me so crazy, because if you think even just back maybe 5-10 years ago, if you had somebody who had one of these dysphoric mental issues, mental conditions, people would universally say, you need to get help. We need to step in right now, and we need to have an intervention, And I think that there is some degree of that still with things like if you have bulimia or if you are anorexic, right? People stepping in. But if you think about it, the logic that's being used, because here's what it comes down to. You have to say, what is the logic currently being used for this argument? And the logic is, well, that is how I feel, and therefore it is true. And it's like, well, one, feelings change, so that's not a very good basis for reality. If you base your reality on feelings alone, guess what? That's going to create a lot of problems, because you'll feel really happy one day, you'll feel really sad the next day, and if your whole reality is based on those feelings, guess what? That's going to be a very roller coaster ride, and the reason why people oftentimes have issues with depression, anxiety, that have those issues is very, very clearly stated, for one. But then also, too, the logic just falls apart, because they try to say, well, it's different somehow when it's gender related. And you have to think to yourself, well, wait a minute, that doesn't make any sense either, because we're talking about a biological, right? A biological condition, really a psychological condition, where you are doing something to try to impact the biology that you have that cannot actually be changed. And so it is really sad in general, for sure. Let's see. Lance Mala says, also, you're going to watch Ahsoka. The lack of excitement around it is tangible. The very best part of Mandalorian Season 3 was your physical impersonation of Grogu while running. Hilarious. Oh, man. Seriously, that was the best part of the show. The way I described the running, I think, is accurate, which is the way in which Grogu ran in Season 3 was that of the puppets from Team America World Police. Literally, that's how they were running. It was crazy. And no, I'm not excited for Ahsoka. I might watch it because I think for Friday Night Tights we're going to at least try to talk about it. But for instance, I know that we were looking into, or we were kind of talking a little bit about the most recent Marvel show, right? With, I don't know why I'm just blanked on it. It makes sense that I blanked on it. Secret Invasion. I started watching that show because we were kind of talking about it. And I've now just gotten to the point where I just care so little about what's going on in the show. I haven't watched it. I think I've watched 3 episodes and then I gave up. And apparently the show's already over. Like the season's already up. And, I'm not even curious really that much to find out what happens. So that's kind of where I am right now with Disney shows in general, whether it's the MCU or whether it's Star Wars. They've just taken away any and all interest that one could really have, Kincaid Rumsky over on Rumble says school vouchers are basically the way capitalism actually works. Yeah, people get to actually use their dollars. And here's the thing, right? If we're going to have these funds, right, then we might as well allow the funds to be transportable, to allow them to have choice, right? To have school choice, to be able to say, hey, I want my child to have a good education. And so therefore the money that you're already going to be spending anyway, why should it not go to a better institution or to one that might actually serve my child better? And so that's why, again, I do understand the argument to an extent from someone who has friends who are public school teachers but then that means money is not going to them. And let's say they might be one of the few public schools that might actually be good. But the issue is that there are a lot of public schools that are not good. There are a lot of public school systems that are very, very corrupt. And also, too, we have to go back to the main question, which is that, what's more important, the individual child and that family or the school system itself, And that's why if we allow for actual more competition to take place in the market, right, in this situation, the chances then of schools going under with no alternatives being available becomes a lot less. And then if it does happen, then there will, if let's say a school system does go under, there will be alternatives that will be available and that will pop up. I think right now where things are going in many ways is it's digging their own grave, because by not allowing competition, but your school is still failing, if it then fails completely, there's not going to be anything to replace it with if it does ultimately fail, So it's kind of crazy. KK and Rumsky, exactly. XXXY, it's a thing. Yep. It's funny how people are saying, well, I'm non-binary. It's like, well, that's factually inaccurate because chromosomally, it's only X's and Y's. Like, even if you are claiming to be quote unquote intersex, it's not a real thing. Because you are either going to be having an extra X chromosome, right? So there are people who are triple X chromosome. There are men who are XXY. And so guess what? That still means that you are a biological male. You happen just to have a chromosomal disorder. But people don't want to talk about that. And obviously the vast majority of the so-called trans community are people that are just completely normal XX or XY, but psychologically they have a major problem and they need help. Let's see. Laura tagged to say, I taught for a bit here in California. Schools get paid based on attendance, so they warehouse difficult kids in these do-nothing schools. Horrible. Yeah. And then also what's even, it's bad enough when the kids are being treated that way, but then also for teachers. If a teacher gets in trouble for something, I forget what it's called. I think it's called like a green room at a school. So they will continue to pay a teacher to not teach. So instead of actually bringing justice or firing a teacher because they have the ability, again, because of the unions, the ability to be tenured or whatever, which is just an insane concept in many ways, they are able to just go to school still, stay in this room and not do anything, but still get paid. And it's like, well, wait a minute, that's not good. that is a lot of problems right there. Let's see. Shadow had to say, I know of all these things because my son watches these videos. I do not want him to watch them anymore. Don't want them to watch. Does not want him to watch them anymore. Goes back to the Barbie movie. I don't want my family to watch unethical things like that. Yeah, Shadow, I totally understand. And there's a really good video out that just got released either yesterday or this morning, and it's a friendly discussion / debate between Ben Shapiro and Brett Cooper. Brett Cooper liked the Barbie movie and defends it, and then Ben Shapiro is being very critical of it. And it's a good discussion because a lot of the arguments that many people in our space are trying to bring up to somehow defend the Barbie movie as being something more than what it actually is. And I mentioned this last night. They're defending a movie that does not actually exist. They're creating a narrative in their mind. And it's a really good discussion, though, because it does bring up all of the different points from both sides. And they're able to have, I think, a pretty good discussion on that point. But one of the things that Shapiro brings up is that concept of ethical behavior and how a film like this, especially a film as big as it is. So as I mentioned, the one story, again, this is going to be mostly open forum, but the one story I did want to at least share because it just broke yesterday is that the projections for this upcoming weekend for Barbenheimer have come out. And right now it's looking very, very good for both movies. So combined, they're expected to have $107 million in their second weekend. And likely Haunted Mansion, which we all know was not likely going to make a lot of money in the first place, is now expected to make even less money. But what's interesting is that they are expected to have pretty solid holds. So these tickets for Barbie and Oppenheimer won't punch themselves, so expect a second weekend of $72 million for Barbie. So remember, Warner Brothers thought going into the first weekend that they were only going to make $75 million. They ended up making around $160 million domestically. For their second weekend, they're expected to make $72. So roughly what they thought the film was going to make opening weekend. That's a 55% drop. So as I said, not as strong as I thought it was going to be. And for all we know, it could be stronger. Remember, the projections going into the weekend were very low, and it ended up coming in well beyond all the projections, right? The only ones that really got it right were Box Office Pro. They don't have their numbers out yet for this upcoming weekend. That will come out sometime either today or tomorrow. But still, the fact that right now the so-called industry experts are saying 72 million, we could see the film make more. We could see the film actually have a 50% hold or even better. But if this is a worst case scenario or a average scenario, this is still very good for it. And again, not even just the 55%, but $72 million. Again, that's higher than the vast majority of opening days for movies. So massive amounts. Oppenheimer, $35 million is projected for its second weekend, which would be a 56% hold there. So yeah, it is going to be a very, very strong start for them. And right now they are projecting for Haunted Mansion for it to have around a $30 million start for the film, but it would not be surprised if they saw between 20 and 25 million. So basically the pre-sales point to this. So I wouldn't be surprised if maybe Box Office Pro has something closer to this number. And then the industry experts might be leaning more towards 20 to 25 million. Personally, I think that this is going to probably take it. But here is, I think, the most interesting part about this article is the fact that if you actually look to what Tony over at Deadline is saying, good old Tony, he has a little bit of honesty here. All right. Notice what he says. After Barbie delivered a record Monday for Warner Brothers of 26.1 million before adjustment for inflation, of course, but still very strong nonetheless. Odds are in her favor to steal Haunted Mansion's family audience. So one of the big lies that's being perpetuated by a lot of people is, well, it's PG-13. People should already know it's PG-13 before going into it. And look, to a point, to a certain extent, I agree. To a certain extent, I agree. You should never go see a movie unless you actually, rather you should no go see a movie with your family, with your kids, unless you actually know what the film is. But the problem, though, is one, the film's marketing was geared towards a younger audience, including families and kids. It's a Barbie movie. Barbie, the quintessential little girl's film. So please spare me the, oh, it wasn't made for them, and so no, again, clearly it was marketed towards those kids. And the property itself is geared towards those kids too. But then also, one other way to tell what kind of movie it is what trailers play before it. You know what trailers play before kids' movies? Other kids' movies. You know what trailers play before Barbie? Kids' movies. Movies like Trolls, for instance. So spare me the nonsense that the film was not marketed towards families and kids. They clearly was. And even Tony at Deadline has to admit yeah, you know what? Barbie's probably going to steal the family audience from Haunted Mansion. Family audience. But anyway, it is expected to do very, very well. Let's see. Graft Tanker 98. Thank you very much for the $5 super chat. Says, thinking of going to Oppenheimer again, just so we can get more movies like this. Yeah, kudos to you, man. I was just recently watching, as I was going through the whole fingerprint process for the background checks that we have to get for school, and I was listening to Normal World. Shout out to Quarter Black Garrett. Normal World has been so funny. Dave Landau and him have great chemistry. And their episode last night was about Barbie, but also about other movies. I love the episode because they went into movies. They talked about film. And so it wasn't just a talk about Barbie or Oppenheimer. Obviously, those were key subjects. But then they started bringing up other movies too. And I just love it. I love when, people like that, especially more, comedic, funny people are talking about movies and really diving into the stories in a very effective way. And it was just it was fantastic. But one of the things that I agree with was when they talked about Oppenheimer, Quarter Black Garrett was talking about saying, yeah, he wasn't a big fan of the movie. I'm right there with him. I think it's a B-level movie. I think that it is a film that is jumping around all over the place and being shot in that very artistic way where it's non-linear, it's jumping all over the place. Sometimes you can recognize that there might be a purpose to that. Other times it's like, okay, now you're just trying to be, quote, artistic for the sake of it. And that's what I would consider like an Oscar bait type film, where it's being trendy, or rather it's not going with the trend. It's trying to be its own thing, and it's trying to tell it in a non-traditional manner, right? It's again, that's what a lot of Oscar bait films tend to do, is they tend to be different than anything else. But that doesn't mean that it's good. That doesn't mean that it's presented well. The acting in the film is phenomenal. The cinematography is phenomenal too. Editing and pacing and story, the way it's presented, I think it's not a film I ever want to see again. But hey, I completely support anyone who does want to support a movie like that if that's something that they are a fan of. I will say this much: do not be surprised for that movie to be able to make its money back. It's doing very well. Barbenheimer is very real. The crossover did happen, to a certain extent, and I think that it's ultimately going to help Oppenheimer in the long run. Fear of FEMA, what's going on, brother? The Morak, what's going on? Tata say, fun students, not systems. Completely agree. Ready Hikuri, what's going on? Tata say, are you going to watch Haunted Mansion? I have no plans to. It does not come across as a film I want to see. Not a lot of people are going to see it in the first place. And yeah, I don't even think for us with Friday Night Tights, I don't even think it's come up in our conversation. It's just not something that I think anyone is going to have a lot of interest in. I don't think the film's going to do well. Let's see. Laura Tide say, funny that the Peaches song from Mario and Ken's song from Barbie are both similar power ballad type songs. Yeah. And that's what's interesting too, is I think that the memes and that song from Barbie is clearly going to be, if it's not already, a very, funny meme. That is what the staying power of the film is. And I think some people are confusing the things that are external to the movie, which is like that general reaction using the imageries, like the whole Ken Dome thing. I think that's funny. But when that is funnier than the movie itself, that speaks volumes. And I think some people might be crossing over the reactions and the meme culture that is reacting in a very great way, like they do with a lot of movies. And I think that they're kind of crossing that into their experience of the movie itself. But Shadow, also good for Oppenheimer. It's almost making in its second weekend what people expected it to make in its opening. Yep, very true. It was only expected to make roughly $50 million. And so for it to be able to bring in around $35 million for its second weekend, that is very good. Again, 55, 56% respectively holds for both of those movies are good for both of them. Technically on paper, at least according to the information that we have available to us, because one, I don't believe Oppenheimer only cost $100 million. That just does not make sense whatsoever. The number is listed as 180. That sounds more accurate to me, but no one else has that. They're the only site that has it. I don't know where they got that number from. There's no other source on that. But Oppenheimer, there's no way it only costs $100 million. Whereas Barbie, again, costs about 150, but the word is that where they filmed allowed for tax credits. And so, therefore, it probably only actually cost the studio $100 million in net cost. But it's looking good for both of them. Bounty into Comics, what's going on, brother? Shout out to Bounty into Comics. Make sure to check them out. Great articles. John F. Trent, friend of the channel. She says, Margot Robbie said it was for kids. That's all you need to know. Yep. That's why it's amazing how many people are trying to make the argument based on the rating alone. And it's like, well, here's the thing. Kind of looking at it at the opposite, Nefarious was rated R, And yet, you know what I told people, and the people who are marketing the movie, you know what they told people? No. This is a movie that you can see with your teenage kids. Because even though the film itself had a R rating, we know why. It's because they wanted to, clearly they wanted to ensure that not a lot of people had access and the ability to go see the film. Everything about the movie is PG-13. And I've heard some people try to argue saying, well, I don't know, the electrocution scene at the end is pretty graphic. It's like, look, it's no more graphic than what we see in most PG-13 films. There's no language in the film. There's no sexuality in the film. There's, I guess you could argue, adult topics, but they're not presented in any other way that would be inappropriate, I think, for a teenage audience. It's a movie that actually, to be perfectly frank, I would love to be able to, especially when it's available on physical media, and I watch it again. It's a film I'm considering bringing into my classroom. And that's juniors in high school. And so when I hear people try to argue that, well, it's PG-13 and so therefore it's not made for kids, it's like a rating does not tell the entire story. People give ratings all the times for various films, and they're not always matching up what the film itself actually gives or what the purpose of the film is. Another great example, another religious film, looking at Passion of the Christ. It's rated R for good reason because it is graphic, no doubt about it. But guess what? There are so many kids that see that movie because it is presenting the death and suffering of Christ. And so the context of what the rating is and the context of the movie matters. You can argue until you're blue in the face that, oh, it's PG-13 Barbie. Okay, it's still Barbie. How is it being marketed? It's being marketed for people that like Barbie. Guess who likes Barbie? Also kids. It is being marketed to kids. Anyone who says otherwise is either ignorant or is malicious. There's just no way. There's just no other way around it. Thank you again, Bounding, for being here. Yes, smash that like button, please. It does mean a lot. Sahil, what's going on? A Simple Crusader, what's going on, A Simple Crusader? Titus, a return to tradition brought me to this channel. Shout out to Anthony Stein. He's awesome. I've really enjoyed your content and have subscribed. It's good to see Catholics being involved and in discussing the culture in all aspects. Thanks. No problem at all, Simple Crusader. Yeah, I mean, there are people in our space, as far as those who are very passionate about their faith and very open and honest about their faith, who I think are doing a disservice to not just the perception, but then also to the reality. They try to act as if we should just avoid culture altogether, right? Recently, one Catholic YouTuber decided to put a tweet out against gaming, for instance, calling gaming, infantile, right? And essentially saying that no one should play games if they're an adult. And it's like, look, you're not going to win that battle because as someone who's actually played games, I can tell you that though to a point, again, I'm not saying that it's completely irrelevant or that it's completely nonsensical point. There are certain things that are there. Like if you are spending all of your time playing games, guess what? That's a problem. In moderation, though, and this is a Catholic teaching, right? Things in moderation, things that are either good for you or not bad for you, rather. If they're good for you or if they are morally ambivalent, right? Too much of one thing can be bad. So moderation is key there. But that's why I am very much we need to engage with the culture and hope that the conversations and the ideas and the things that we bring up have some kind of an impact. But yeah, thank you, Simple Crusader, for being a part of the channel. Laura says, one good thing I'll say about Oppenheimer is Nolan did an excellent job creating a visual representation of someone thinking about physics. Yes. Yes, indeed. Completely agree there. King and Rumsky over on Rumble. Do you think some Twitter accounts are being suspended because of the new Karen CEO? If so, in your opinion, why would Elon have hired her to do that? I honestly, it's hard to say. I can't say one way or the other if that's the specific reason. There's no actual evidence. That's more of a people making correlations saying, well, she's been hired. This did not happen as much as before. Ergo, this must be the reason why. Well, it's not exactly. It could be someone on her team. It could be that she hired somebody who had control over these things that is doing it for all we know, right? It could also just be another rogue agent. It could also be the algorithm. And they have been playing around with the algorithm. And Elon's been very clear saying they are working on the coding for Twitter. They're working on trying to fix the things. And so it could also be that in the process of trying to fix it, new issues were created. And so therefore, some people's accounts got impacted by it. He didn't tag me, but I just have to respond to it. Truth lives. I think you should change your name, especially after a comment like this. Romans are schismatics and created this issue since the Great Schism of 1054. No. You want to know why it's a schism? Because the East left. Christ established one church. I am the way, the truth, the life. Who did he give power and authority to? The apostles. Who did the apostles give their authority to? Their successors. Who are the successors of the successors of the successors? The current day bishops and pope. Simple as that. Anyway. Thanatos Felicitas says, we'll miss you, man. Thanatos, yeah, man. Well, I'll still be on the evening streams. We'll still have our 7 p.m. Tuesday, Saturday streams. So hopefully you can make those from time to time. I know some people can't because of the time differences, but they will be there. Let's see. Roxader says, why do you count inflation? That drives me crazy. Inflation is high because of Russia. So you shouldn't count it. We cannot let Putin win. I really hope that that's a troll. I really hope that that is a joke. I count inflation because it's a fair way of counting. You can even, I mentioned this in previous videos, if you take the numbers as they are reported, and then you take the average ticket price from any given year, you will see, wait a minute, if I do that, or I look at the box office adjusted for inflation and then compare it to a later year, it ends up being around the same. It ends up being very similar. So essentially, if you made $10 million back in 2000, when tickets cost significantly less than they do now, versus if you made $10 million opening day today, when tickets, so keep in mind, let's say average ticket price for the sake of argument, roughly $5 or less on average back in 2000. Nowadays, they're closer to $13 to $14. That 10 million then does not mean the same thing. Because one, the amount of tickets sold back in 2000 for 10 million, way higher than what it would be $10 million today, sold at around $13, $14. Whereas if you take that 10 million and adjust for inflation, guess what? Gives you a very similar metric, a very similar difference. So you can do either, and it will still tell you the same exact thing. Because some people say, I hate inflation, you should do ticket sales. The problem, though, is that the ticket sales say the same thing. They indicate the same information. It's just crazy how people can't understand that concept. I'm not even really a math person. It's funny because I do all this math, and yet I hate math. It's one of my worst subjects ever. I just so happened to find the box office specifically interesting and then had to figure out and formulate these things. I had to do math. It was hard. No, I find box office math to be a lot of fun. Math in general, not fun. Box office math is a lot of fun. Let's see. Reddy Hikuri says, I think Prestige is the best Nolan movie. Yeah, I think there's a great argument for that. Some people might say The Dark Knight, and I think that, again, makes sense, but the ending of The Dark Knight kind of falls off a bit. This is something also that Quarterback Garrett mentioned last night. It was either him or Dave Landau who mentioned this, but they were talking about movies and Nolan films specifically, and the whole introduction of Two-Face and the end of Two-Face was very rushed, was just not very good, right? So I think that because of that reason, Prestige is going to win out. I think Prestige, for me, I think Prestige is definitely the best film he's ever done. So good. Big Worm, who's a member, says, looking at the numbers, what do you think the chances are that Mission Impossible 7 flops? Very, very strong. Very high, if not but guaranteed. And again, it also depends on what your break-even point is. As you all know, I use a 2.5 times multiplier. So that means the budget times 2.5 break-even. Other people use a 3 times. So for me, the break-even point in my chart, the break-even is around 725. For other people's, it would be around 900 million. So I think 725 is a possibility. I don't necessarily think it's a likelihood, but we honestly don't know what those international numbers will be down the line. We know that the previous Mission Impossible films have all done very well down the stretch internationally. Each one of the modern era, 2015, 2018, made over 600 million, some even over $650 million internationally. So there could still be a lot of space left for this movie to make money there. It could also come in far below that. We just don't know yet. Again, that's something that we'll only know when the movie's actually done. And it'll be interesting to see, though. KN/Kareen, what's going on? KN/Kareen, thank you for the $10 super chat. Appreciate it. It says, I think Ryan Gosling outshined Margot Robbie. He made me laugh the most. He had the best arc. He wasn't a villain to me. if I was a child, I would want his doll instead of Barbie based on this movie. That's what I heard a lot of people been saying. And we've seen the reactions, right? What is making all of the waves? It's one, the Ken song, right? It's the song that Ken sings. That's the one that's getting a lot of people's attention. Who is the actor that everyone's talking about? They're talking about Ryan Gosling. They're not really talking a whole lot about Margot Robbie. Though some have made that argument, I think I've actually heard quite a bit more about Margot Robbie than what maybe other people have heard. Because universally, I've heard people say that they thought that she was great in the role and that she did a great job. But I will say, at the very least, not nearly as much attention, though, as what Ryan Gosling has gotten. So that's why I said, I think that it's the outer external perception and then the meme culture, the way in which we think about things and the way in which we then establish things that are not in the movie itself, but now become a part of, it's what pop culture is, right? Now become a part of the culture itself. That, I think, is actually where more of the entertainment is, less so in the actual movie itself. So Heel says, holy crap, Barbie made another $26 million today. Oh, did the numbers update? That's what's interesting. You know how studios are always very, very slow to update their numbers? In the case of Barbie, they get that like first thing. Most studios, you don't get these updates until maybe noon, 1 p.m. But you're right. The numbers is now reporting another $26 million. No change. So it only dropped 40% from Sunday to Monday. And now from Monday to Tuesday, no change. Now, some may say, how is that possible? Remember, Tuesdays are discount days. So where you might see from a day to day a drop, Monday to Tuesday, you usually don't see as high of a drop. Sometimes you even see an increase because that's when the discounted tickets go on sale. But yeah, you are correct. Numbers is reporting another $26 million Tuesday. So people ask, why do I think the film's going to make $1 billion? Right here. Clearly, I don't like the movie. Clearly, I have a lot of issues with the film director, the messaging of the movie being terrible for kids and young people especially. However, I'm also going to be honest with you about the numbers. And when you have a 40% hold from Sunday to Monday, and now you're seeing no change at all, first Monday to first Tuesday, oh boy. Right now, this film is now past $408 million worldwide. $408 million. The chances then of this movie getting to $500 million before the weekend are now very high. If it's still making 20 plus million each day, let's see, add another 20 million today, 20 million on Thursday. That already brings it up to $450 million. So yeah, the movie is going to make well past, at this point now I can say, it's going to fly past $500 million. You're now talking end of this weekend, somewhere in the range of 600 plus million worldwide. Holy crap. And remember, most films make about, in their first 2 weeks at the box office, most films tend to make around 60 to 70% of their entire box office. So that's why $1 billion is now basically a guarantee. Basically, it is a guarantee. Laura, I will not skip your comment. Don't worry. I just wanted to get the that super chat. Wait a minute. Did I skip your comment? If I did, I apologize. Because I got to your Oppenheimer comment. Was there another comment? Because in that one, you tagged somebody else. There's some comments that I haven't gotten to yet. I'm sorry, Laura. Let me know which comment I skipped. But yeah, you are correct. That is huge, Sahil. Thanks for letting me know about that. So yeah, once again, going to confirm, Barbie, as garbage as a film as it actually is objectively, subjectively people are enjoying it. Subjectively, people are spreading the word, and it's doing well. There's just no bones about it. It's now easily made back its budget and is making even more and more profit. And it's only been out for a week. Hasn't even been out for a full week. So yeah, this movie is going to make a ton of money for Warner Brothers and for Mattel as well. Isn't that swell? You're welcome. Will Gentry, what's going on, brother? Time to say, first thing I see is the inflation troll joke. I thought it was a serious point at first. Then it just went sideways. Morning, I hope you're doing well. Hope Lady Freya Thor are doing well. Thank you very much. Yeah, they're both doing great. And Will Gentry, glad to have you here, man. Return to tradition. Speaking of Anthony, speak of the devil. Return to tradition, fantastic Catholic channel, says, good morning. Math is my enemy. Yeah, math was my enemy for a very, very long time. Roxader tagged to say, I still watch you because you are the only good box office analyst who uploads the box office breakdowns quickly, but the politics drives me nuts. Sorry, not sorry. I think that some people have this perception of me as somehow being more political than I actually am. I never also claimed I was going to be a completely unbiased person. I'm usually pretty clear on my biases, especially if I'm doing a movie review. I try to be as objective as I possibly can. That's why, for instance, if there's a movie that deals with any time in medieval history or any time in which knights are present, I'll say, look, I'm biased towards these movies. I love these movies. And I try to always, get that out there. When it comes, if you're talking specifically about my coverage of Barbie, I'm just speaking truth about Barbie. There's a lot of nonsense that's being spread out there. Let's see. Mr. Roy, what's going on, good sir? Welcome back. Glad to have you here. Abomination hanging over on Odyssey. Abomination, thanks for lighting up that fire button over there. King Kane Rumsky over on Rumble tagged to say, why do you think Mission Impossible 7 may be flopping? I heard it was a good movie. Maybe people are getting tired of the formula. Something else maybe. I think that what we've kind of learned is that momentum is key for films. You got to have momentum. And Mission Impossible shot itself in the foot by opening on that Monday and Tuesday instead, because it led to people being confused, people saying, wait, the movie's already out? I didn't know that. For one, and then it also made it impossible for the film to really build up any energy. Now, the mindset of why did they do that? They wanted to have more days in IMAX. They wanted to have more days in the premium formatted screens. So I think ultimately it was the release schedule that killed the movie. Because as I said, if you look at the general reaction of not even just critics, but more importantly, audiences, it's overwhelmingly positive. And the number of people who say, you need to watch this movie, also incredibly high. So it's not missing any of the points there. The film itself is really, really good. I think some people are getting caught up on that because when I say a film is really, really good, they think that means I'm saying it's perfect, and no film is perfect. The film has issues just like any other movie has issues, right? But the movie's fantastic. The movie's a lot of fun. But I think it was the release schedule that hurt the film. So I think ultimately that some people might try to say it was Sound of Freedom. And again, Sound of Freedom may have taken some people away, but there is no actual metric anyone can point to that shows people who would have otherwise gone to see Mission Impossible choosing not to go see the film ever because they saw Sound of Freedom instead. There's no metric pointing to that. So I think it was really just the release schedule of the film. And it's just very unlucky, really, because if the film had released over 4th of July weekend, it would have then gotten that extra time in theaters, would have had a more traditional release schedule, and then guess what? It would have been, hey, don't go see that garbage of Dial of Destiny, go see this film instead, right? And we've seen that sometimes having these doubling up of big movies can actually be good, right? The typical mindset people have is, oh, you don't want to release your movie on this weekend because there's another big movie coming out. Well, Barbenheimer just proved that to be completely irrelevant. Because what Barbenheimer showed is that you can still have two movies released on the same weekend and both of them do really, really well, especially when you have demographic differences. There is some crossover, but really not as much as some might think that it is, because clearly there's going to be money that's going to both of those movies, right? People who otherwise would have seen, I think the number though, I think this was the number that came out, only about 6% of the Barbie audience went also the same weekend to go see Oppenheimer, which again, that's significant, but it's not like this overwhelming majority of people. So people who would have seen both movies, it's again, probably higher than what other double features would be because of the whole social media blitz and the meme culture that really kind of preserved that, but not guaranteed. But one of the reasons why both could succeed and not really hurt each other is because remember, Barbie was well over 60+% female, whereas Oppenheimer was around 60+% male. So, and remember, I broke this down just last night. If you actually look at the other further demographics, the vast majority of the Barbie audience is Gen Z. It's actually the Zoomers that are showing up in the largest portion. So to a, slightly less than that. So still also a big part of it is also, millennials. Millennials and Gen Zs, those are the biggest piles, female audience specifically. Those are the biggest portions of people going to see this movie as far as the demographic breakdown are concerned. Whereas male, it's actually a much larger portion going towards Oppenheimer instead. I think the Gen Z men slightly went higher to Barbie versus Oppenheimer. But then once you get to the older audiences, every single one, it becomes that much higher for Oppenheimer versus Barbie. Whereas for the women, it's very, very high for the younger audiences and then gets a lot lower as you get older, with the lowest being the baby boomers of all people. So yeah, hopefully that made some sense though. Kincaid Rumsky. Abomination over on Odyssey says, I'm guessing that part 1 also turns people off when they consider watching it again. They might be waiting until part 2 before they watch part 1 again. That could be the case, but I think that a lot of people, myself included, have liked it enough to where I want to watch it again. But it's going to be interesting to see what the final numbers are, because as I said, historically, there isn't a lot of hope that movie has. But that's based on historical standards, and we all know Mario was a great example. Mario did not follow typical historical standards. It bucked the trends, and so that's why, one of the many reasons why I was wrong in the predictions on that movie. And so that's why, though, again, it's very rare that does happen when a movie completely bucks all the trends in such a way as that. So for all we know, Mission Impossible might end up legging out. Because remember, I guess a similar film, not in the exact same way, but a similar film to think about. Remember when the opening weekend and even the second weekend came out for Puss in Boots, The Last Wish? And I remember breaking this down saying this movie doesn't look like it's going to make its money back, even though I'm hearing a lot of positive things. What happened? It was down the stretch that it had very great holds for a very long time, and it ended up making enough to be able to actually be a chart breaker. It made a heck of a lot more compared to its first 2 weeks. Could we see that for Mission Impossible? Historically, I don't see it. Doesn't mean that it's not going to happen, though. So hopefully that makes some sense. Laura, sorry, says, I was sorry. I must have missed you reading it. # sorry. I'm so sorry. Yeah, you should be. You should be sorry. You should be. Speaking of that, I was trying to see, I thought I still had the sorry video, but do I no longer have it? I know I have it on the Restream Studio side of things, but I guess I don't have it anymore in my OBS. Well, that makes me sad. I've got the math. I've got excommunicado. I must have gotten rid of that, and then the nay. I don't have the nay there anymore. I say nay. Ready Hikuri, do you think Sound of Freedom will end its domestic run higher than Mission Impossible 7? Again, it's too hard to say at this point, because Sound of Freedom is doing very, very well, doing even better than Mission Impossible, in fact, in many ways. But the question, I think, is going to be, how long can it stay in theaters? How long will theaters keep the movie? Because there's a huge campaign against it, and that might be one of the reasons why it's actually doing better than what anyone would have expected. But I think the question is going to be, how long does it have a theatrical run versus the major studio behind Mission Impossible, Paramount? How much longer can they keep their film in theaters? Because, again, Mission Impossible, though not doing phenomenal, is still doing well enough for them to keep it in a lot of theaters. So, Tina Guzman, what's going on, Tina? Says, what grade is your favorite to teach? I only teach juniors. So my entire time here in Tennessee, I've only taught juniors, and it's a great level to teach. In my history as a teacher, I think I'm going into about year 10 or so of teaching, and my favorite grade is definitely the juniors. The only grade I have not taught is seniors. So I taught freshmen and sophomores, both of which are bad for different reasons. Freshmen are freshmen. If you've taught school or high school especially, you're like, okay, yeah, freshmen are just freshmen. There's no other way to describe it. Sophomores is a reason why the name sophomore means what it means, which is wise fool. It's very, very true. And the only time I ever taught sophomores was at an all-boys Catholic school. And guess what? A lot more foolishness than wisdom going on in that time in their life. There's just something about the summer between sophomore and junior year where many, not all, but many grow up and mature to at least a level where you're not having to do as much classroom management. It's not a rule. It's not a guarantee. There's obviously exceptions, but it tends to be a lot more. So for all I know, if I ever taught seniors, I'd probably enjoy that, but hard to say. Let's see. Cthulhu. Time to say, moral question. If Monty Python Holy Grail had women take over Camelot, after the ensuing musical number, author took it back, would people be as hard on plot? Earnestly thinking about proper comparison. It's hard to say because that doesn't happen in the actual movie. So are you trying to say, like, if in the movie that happened instead? I think that one of the differences is that it would still be coming from Monty Python, Like, it would still be coming from that comedy troupe. And so it would be done then in a way that it's hard to do that because you can't to compare. And I know that you're not doing this directly, but that's comparing Monty Python to Greta Gerwig. Monty Python is infinitely more intelligent and infinitely funnier in the way in which they're able to design their scenes and sequences than Greta Gerwig could ever hope to be. Noah Baumbach as well, who is a co-writer on the film. So it's hard to say that specifically. It's hard to find that comparison. Roxander, time to say, I love Barbie. It is sticking it to the right wingers, just like Ukraine is sticking it to Putin. Okay, now you got to be a troll, dude. Like, you keep bringing up Ukraine and Putin. Come on. We need to get the heck out of that country. We have no business being there at all. And all we are doing is funding the military-industrial complex, brother. That's not political. That's just a fact. Sounds like you need to get an education. Steven, time to say, I'm sad no more. Good morning, Asgard. When do you think you'll do another one like this? Next summer. And it's not a guarantee that it'll be next summer. Because next summer we will have baby girl. Baby girl will be a few months old at that point. It's getting close to half a year old. So whether or not daycare will be a possibility at that point, I don't know. And so I remember when the summer after baby Thor was born, that first month of June, I was stay-at-home dad. So, so I don't know if that's going to happen again because we're now older and wiser. Baby Thor is getting close to being 3, which is just insane to me. But that's what happened last time. Laura, time to say, I sneaked into Barbie for a moment and just happened to catch the Ken song. As campy as the movie is, Gosling really put everything into his performance, and you have to respect that. Oh, for sure. That's why, as I said, there are positives that I can point to. Ryan Gosling, I think, did a great job. I think also the set design and the costume design are also brilliant. It's just the story isn't good. The acting in the film is actually fine. It's the story and the writing that's garbage. Let us see. Steven, I'd say, tell us your adventure when you went to prom for senior year. Did you have a date, limo, party bus? I'm not a party person at all. That is not me whatsoever. So, I went, for senior, I went with a friend. Funny story, for dances, I only ever went with a girlfriend for one dance. And it was was it the winter formal dance? Maybe? That's the only dance I ever went to as far as the dances at my school. I think I only went to maybe 1 or 2 dances at, because again, all boys school. We were friends with a lot of people that were at all girls school. So I think I only ever went to maybe 1 or 2 dances where I was actually dating the person that I went to the dance with. The vast majority of the time, I was going with friends. And it was a blast. It was so much more fun going with a friend because there was no expectations and we were just able to have fun. But yeah, I'm not that kind of person to, I don't drink. I'm straight edge. So that's not really my thing. That's not really my scene. Cat and Philly, what's going on? Unknowns, what's going on? Jimmy V, had to say, congrats for Warner getting their first big hit in years. It'll soften the blow of Shazam 2 and The Flash's financial losses and the upcoming losses from Blue Beetle, Wonka, and Aquaman 2. I mean, it definitely will soften it. How much is the big question? Because it's going to make a lot of money. It's going to make a lot of profit for them, as it's already profitable, less than a week out from its release. Will it be enough, though, to make up for the massive losses from those movies? I don't know. I mean, because you're looking at Warner Brothers collectively, maybe close to $1 billion in financial losses for all those films? I don't think that you're going to see that much profit coming from Barbie as far as the studio itself directly. But you'll definitely, I think several $100 million in profit is likely to happen. Orange Hat says, did I just hear the word troll? Yeah. I mean, it's hard to say. It's really hard to figure out whether he is a troll or not. Will Gentry tried to say, if your son is Thor, does that mean your daughter will be Loki? Apparently, he can pick and choose his gender, so it kind of fits. No, let's not do that. Definitely don't want to put that on her at all. Congrats on the upcoming loss of sleep, though. Yeah, I mean, we're hoping and praying that she has a very similar sleep schedule / attitude as baby Thor did, because especially in those early days, it's, there's only so much that you can do. But we were able to get a pretty good system going. We were very we put a lot of stress on sleep and sleep health. And so we get into forming patterns and forming schedules. And I think it's actually been a huge benefit to baby Thor. So we're going to try to do the same thing as well for her. But in those early days, of course, you're not getting a lot of sleep because, well, again, babies have to eat a lot. So, and the difference though, I think, and the reason why I was able to get through it more easily, and really both of us, is that we were a team. You know how sometimes you see in movies and shows, you'll say, it's your turn. No, it's your turn. No, it's your turn. You know, for baby Thor, I took 2 weeks off for quote unquote, paternity leave. And it was just, we teamed. When she was up, I was up. And I know some people want to say that seems counterintuitive. You should want one parent. It's like, yeah, but if we're already both off from work specifically so that we can, dedicate our time to this brand new life, it's actually, to me, it was better knowing I was struggling and suffering. It's one of those joyous suffering things along with the person right there with me. It was actually a benefit. It actually helped quite a bit. Plus, I can fall asleep a lot more easily than she can. So I at least was able to get some sleep. Whereas I feel really bad because she eventually, because of exhaustion, was able to get some sleep. But let's see. Steven, your thoughts on The Rock donating 7-figure to actors' writers' strike? You think it was due to sympathy or ego? It's hard to say. I don't really have an opinion on that one, to be perfectly frank, because I don't really know much about it, and I don't really care a whole lot about that. So anyway, we're a little over time today, but hey, this was a fun discussion. This is, again, the last Good Morning Asgard podcast of the summer. So thank y'all for y'all's comments, for y'all's questions. It was very, very fun. And just again, if you happen to miss it, we do have the numbers out now for the Tuesday for Barbie. Barbie, $26 million. That's no change from the previous day. So as I mentioned just yesterday, a 40% hold from Sunday to Monday is a very good hold. It's a very strong hold. It had no change at all from Monday to Tuesday, which is exceptional. So with that, and also with Deadline now coming out with the drop expected to be 55%, based on the numbers from this Tuesday, now I'm thinking that 55% might actually be too high. I think it might actually end up being closer to 50, maybe even in the 40s, based on what we're seeing. Again, scary times. Implications are terrifying, but the numbers are what they are. We can't change them. The Morak. Thank you for that very much. Thank you for that generous $20 super chat. Morak saying, thanks for the entertainment this summer. I hope you have a great school year. Have lunch on me. Well, thank you, Morak. I appreciate that. Thank you. Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. It's always fun to do these streams. It's a lot easier to stream in the morning than in the evening, because it's the beginning of the day. It's exciting. We're getting all the stuff together and having great conversations, and it's also great because there are so many people who are subscribers and sometimes I forget just how many people are not U.S. based. So people who can't join the regular 7 p.m. Eastern live streams that I do for Tuesdays and Thursdays, and so I'm always happy to do these summer streams. They're always a lot of fun. And especially, compared to previous years, it's always great when there's movies to talk about. As much as I can't stand this film, the Barbie film, I at the very least am so happy to know that there's box office news, and there's box office talk and discussions. I remember when we were in the COVID times, just how difficult it was to find a lot of stuff to talk about because there were no movies out, there was nothing going on, and as much content, older content that there is to look at and to review, it's still clearly just not anywhere close to having new films that you can talk about and experience all the time. And so I thank y'all for joining, because if y'all weren't here, I'd be talking to nobody, which means I just wouldn't be doing anything. So seriously, y'all are the real legends. Y'all are the real heroes. And I appreciate y'all's love and y'all's support. So thank y'all again for being here. And thank y'all for everything. And yeah, I mean, as far as streaming schedule, I will have one more morning stream for the summer tomorrow. Obviously there might be some morning streams, earlier streams, I should say, because I'll still be doing the Salty Saturdays, which are, 1 p.m. Eastern time starting. And then the the Chosen of Valhalla streams, those typically tend to be earlier as well. But we will have a Chosen stream tomorrow. So join us tomorrow for a Chosen of Valhalla stream. I think we are doing from 11 to 2. I think that is the current plan. Let me check the Discord to see what I've told everyone. 11 to 1. Sorry, 11 to 1. Because I can't spend as much time streaming as I once was able to do. So yeah, from 11 to 1 Eastern time tomorrow, Thursday, we will have our Chosen of Valhalla stream, and we should have a pretty packed house based on the people who have confirmed that they can be there. So one more morning stream tomorrow, 11 to 1, and then Friday Night Tights. I should be able to jump on towards the beginning again this week, maybe. We'll have to wait and see. And then after that, we'll have our Saturday evening stream from 7 to 8:30 p.m. Eastern time. And after that, next week, going into my meetings. So the summer schedule will be over. And so that means it'll just be Tuesdays and Saturdays, 7 p.m. Eastern start time. Those will be the two streams that I do during the week. Those are the ones that I can do while I'm working. And of course, we'll have the Chosen streams every month at different times. Probably going to be weekends now because I can't feasibly do the weekdays during the school year. But seriously, this has been great. It's been a lot of fun. I will see, hopefully, all of you joining tomorrow on the Chosen of Valhalla live stream. So it'll be live here on the same channel. Just know for the Chosen streams, I'm not able to interact with the chat nearly as much as my focus is on my Chosen, but we're able to have a lot of fun, and we're able to have some really good conversations. And so, Laura, I know you got work, and again, I'm sorry that we've had to do it this way. Hopefully you can maybe jump in, because that would be a fun time. So anyway, you guys are all amazing and beautiful people. Go check out the Geeks and Gamers daily stream. I'm sure it's already live, and I'm sure they'll be talking about Barbie box office as well as other things. This has been great. Have a wonderful rest of your day, everybody. I need to go to the store. I need to do some house things. Responsibilities. Anyway, you guys are great. As always, God bless. And now for a special shout out to all of my members at the Keeper of the Bifrost level and above, starting off first with my members over on Patreon: Father Luca Illick, Heimir Irie Hymason, Garrett Searles, Joe Horn, Jonathan Carney, Orange Chat Reviews, check out his YouTube channel by the same name, Laura, the Monomator General's Story, Rosetta Allen, check out her YouTube channel, Eagle Rider, and Miss Martin Muses, check out her YouTube channel by the same name as well. To my Subscribe Star peeps, Zine Voders, Matt317, check out his Twitch channel by the same name, Fast Reaction, The R, Mr. Roy, J-Rod, The Beer Guru, and ZK Man, who you can check out over at xtheboundaries.co. And lastly, to my locals members, Miss Minnesota Hockey Fan, How About a Hockey Player, J.H. Schwalbach, and Robert Barnes, the amazing lawyer. So thank y'all very much for being my supporters at the Keep of the Bifrost level and above. And if you want your name shouted out at the end of every live stream and video, go ahead and check out that top link in the video description below to find out ways to sign up to support the channel and to be able to get access to things like the shoutouts, but also to giveaways. I have an exclusive giveaways channel on my Discord server where I give away 4Ks, Blu-rays, all kinds of stuff, and also access to an exclusive podcast that I do once or twice a month, depending on what I'm able to get accomplished, especially over the course of this crazy, crazy busy summer. You guys are all amazing and beautiful people. Hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. And as always, God bless.